I'm Josh Larky. Welcome to the Dominator. Today I'm going to be talking about my 22 favorite, the best fantasy football sleepers for 2024 fantasy football. I am going to be using Underdog Fantasy ADP. Players have to be going in round 13 or later. Make sure you check out the two previous shows where I went my favorite early round picks, rounds 1 through 6, and favorite middle round picks, 7 through 12. Now, one thing that's different about this show that I wanted to make sure, some people out there, they might be like, Josh, I'm not really a best ball player. I want to get ready for real fantasy football for 2024 redraft. Folks, whether it's best ball, whether it's redraft, these are 22 players I legitimately think have a chance to be starting for you each week in your managed leagues, not just in best ball. Let's get right down to it. It's a rapid fire show. I've got two quarterbacks that I'm going to discuss. The first quarterback is Deshaun Watson, Browns. So 3 of his 5 healthy games last year resulted in top 10 fantasy football finishes. Seriously. He ran just one fewer time per game than Josh Allen. So the rushing upside still there with Watson. Speaking of Josh Allen, Cleveland just hired Ken Dorsey, Josh Allen's longtime offensive coordinator, this offseason to be the offensive coordinator and run a lot more spread for the Browns. Nick Chubb, as we know, is injured. The team just added wide receiver Jerry Jeudy. I think it's going to be a pretty pass-heavy attack. That's good for fantasy. Since more passing yardage with Watson scrambling, there's going to be more designed passing plays, probably more rushing attempts, if not the same as last year, which was already really good. I'm in on Deshaun Watson. Hey, you got to hold your nose for that one. You also have to hold your nose for the other quarterback that I really like, Russell Wilson. Guys, Russell Wilson last year had the same number of rush attempts per game as Kyler Murray. And he had more. This is my favorite stat of the show. You get it 2 minutes in. Russell Wilson had more passing touchdowns per game last year than Patrick Mahomes. Russell Wilson was fantasy football's quarterback 12 on a per game basis last year. Obviously, the change of scenery to the Steelers, I'd argue a better offensive line for his skill set and a potentially better supporting cast than what he had last year with the Broncos as well. Speaking of running backs, talking about running backs, let's dive in. We hit 2 quarterbacks. We got a lot of running backs to discuss. Let's talk about Ty Chandler of the Vikings. Aaron Jones missed 6 games to injury last year. He turns 30 years old during the 2024 season. The Vikings depth chart's pretty hollowed out. It's newly signed Aaron Jones, and then it's Ty Chandler, and there's not much else. Chandler is one of the NFL's fastest running backs. He's going to be tied to either Sam Darnold or the rookie in J.J. McCarthy. So probably a lot of check down attempts coming to the running back position. Yeah, the touchdown upside is probably lacking a little bit because I don't think this offense scores that many points, but he can get volume on the ground. He can get a lot of volume through the air as well because of the quarterback situation. Ty Chandler averaged more than 15 touches per game last year in his 4 starts, and he finished as the RB4 overall in week 15 with 25 fantasy points. Kamani Vidal, Chargers running back. So Gus Edwards is a 29-year-old whose best trait is just running the ball up the middle. J.K. Dobbins over the past 5 seasons has dealt with a broken leg, ACL surgery, LCL surgery, a hamstring tear, and most recently a torn Achilles. Insert Kamani Vidal, a short, sturdy back with good speed who ran for over 1,600 yards last year in college. Neither Edwards nor Dobbins have caught passes at the NFL level. Vidal had 92 receptions for 700 receiving yards in college. Scouts have raved about his pass blocking ability. Justin Herbert's a running back friendly quarterback for fantasy football. The Chargers offensive line is awesome. Vidal's got serious upside. Let's talk about another rookie running back, Miami Dolphins' Jalen Wright. After 8 injury-filled seasons, Raheem Mostert finally put it together last year, finishing with an NFL-leading 18 rushing touchdowns. Only Christian McCaffrey and Kyren Williams had more half PPR fantasy points per game than Mostert. But, one sec. Well, putting my binoculars on, I'm looking. Folks, I looked at the leaderboard. Rookie Devon Achane was 4th. McCaffrey, Kyren Williams, Mostert, Achane, 4th in fantasy points per game last year among running backs. If anything happens to the 32-year-old Mostert or the undersized Devon Achane, the 4th-round rookie in Jalen Wright steps into a fantasy-friendly system that rewards speed. Wright had a faster 40 time at the combine than even Jonathan Taylor. I like Tyler Algier. Now, the Falcons fifth-round pick from a couple years back. He quietly had over 1,000 rushing yards as a rookie in 2022, and he still had nearly 900 total yards just last year. He's solid in all phases. The Atlanta offense should be great with a new coaching staff, with Kirk Cousins in at quarterback. Algiers got legitimate fantasy RB1 upside if Bijan Robinson goes down. I also like another rookie. Let's talk about running back Ray Davis of the Bills. James Cook is undersized. He generally has not been given goal line carries. Ray Davis is short and stocky. He's got a higher BMI than Derrick Henry. You can check that on playerprofiler.com. Ray Davis had at least 1,000 rushing yards and 29 receptions back-to-back college seasons at Kentucky. At worst, he's in a committee with James Cook. If Cook goes down, he's on a Josh Allen offense without much at wide receiver. It's basically Dalton Kincaid as the wide receiver one there. Running back targets, as we know, it's partially being good at pass catching. We know that Ray Davis has that 29 receptions back-to-back seasons at Kentucky, and partially from receivers not getting open. So with the weak receiving core that the Bills have, there's some real upside here. Massive potential for the fourth-round rookie running back Ray Davis. Another fourth-round rookie, Bucky Irving of the Buccaneers. He's the handcuff to Rachaad White. Rachaad White was inefficient last year, and he got all the touches. NFL running backs historically struggle to hold up to high volume year after year. So Rachaad White having 336 touches last year, second among running backs in the NFL, that might not bode well for his 2024 durability. I get it. The Bucky Irving, he's small, he's slow, but I'm looking again at the depth chart. There's nobody else in this Bucs running back room. And Irving was incredibly productive at Oregon. He had nearly 1,200 rushing yards and 56 receptions as a junior this past season. He looks like he could be the legitimate one-for-one replacement should anything happen. One-for-one replacement for the RB10 in fantasy last year, Rachaad White. I also like Khalil Herbert of the Bears. He's quietly been one of the NFL's better pure rushers since coming into the league 3 years ago. Caleb Williams, their new quarterback's just an incredible prospect. He's got some mobility, which could help the running back efficiency for the Bears. Swift has a long injury history. We know that the team just signed him to a big deal. Khalil Herbert played at least half the snaps in 7 games last year. So he's on the field at least half the time in 7 games. Over 120 yards in 3 of 7, so almost half. The year before, in 2022, he played at least half the snaps in just 2 games, and he had at least 100 yards in both of those games. So essentially, over the past 2 years, he's reaching 100 total yards more than half the time when he starts the game. Tyrone Tracy. The New York Giants 5th-round rookie played 6 years in college. Boo. We don't like that. But folks, we should dig in. Let's take our shovel out. Let's dig into the profile a little bit more. As a sophomore at Iowa, he finished second on the team in receiving. He was a converted receiver. He finished second on the team receiving behind current NFL wide receiver Emir Smith-Marset. And he finished ahead in receiving at the time compared to tight end Sam Laporta. After 4 years at Iowa, Tyrone Tracy transferred to Purdue. They converted him to running back. He played there the past 2 seasons. Last year, he had 850 total yards, 8 touchdowns as a running back. Plus, last year, he had over 400 kick return yards. He's 209 pounds. He ran in the 4.4s at the combine. He's got a wide receiver caliber 40-inch vertical jump. What we're looking at is a prime athlete who's got minimal running back competition behind Devin Singletary in New York. You could say he's one injury away from a really intriguing role. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Hold your nose. We're doing a lot of the hold your noses. It's a sleeper show. We're not going to like all these names, but let's look at the situation. There's currently no Jerick McKinnon in Kansas City. The current depth chart's Isaiah Pacheco, and then Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Behind him, it might be Deneric Prince, Keontae Ingram. Pacheco's got a violent running style. Clyde Edwards-Helaire looks legitimately like the direct handcuff. He's on a 1-year prove-it deal. His rookie contract expired. It feels gross, but if we remove the name, we are looking at the Chiefs' handcuffed running back, essentially being a last-round dart throw. I'm taking that chance on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm also taking a chance on Houston Texans running back Dameon Pierce. Joe Mixon is 28 years old with more than 1,800 NFL touches. Pierce was great as a rookie. He had more than 1,100 yards. Then he struggled in the Texans' new running scheme last year. It was a 49ers scheme. We had Bobby Slowick coming over. who was the new coach for the Texans. And Pierce really struggled, but he's back there again. It's just Mixon and then him. There's very little else on the depth chart. We've got a one injury away running back with an all-purpose skill set on a top 3 offense. Another one, it's gross. Let's think about the Army. Let's think about the Navy. Let's think about the tank. Terrible transition. My bad. Anyway, Tank Bigsby. Tank Bigsby might have been the NFL's worst running back last year for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Legitimately, he might have been the worst NFL running back. He had 2.6 yards per carry. He played all 17 games, and I'm not kidding. I'm totally serious. In 17 games, he had 1 catch for 6 yards. Atrocious. But the Jaguars have finished 10th and 13th the past 2 years in NFL scoring, so it's a good offense. ETN has nearly 600 touches over the past 2 seasons. He's racking up the touches. Bigsby just needs to beat out the 28-year-old Dearness Johnson for touches if ETN goes down. And the team continually keeps saying that they have faith in Tank Bigsby. I got one more running back for you before we hit some receivers and tight ends. And that running back, you guessed it, folks. If you follow me on Twitter at JLarkyTweets, you know that I love Will Shipley. So the Philadelphia Eagles gave Saquon Barkley the huge contract in free agency. And they refused to give Kenny Gainwell a consistent role. So insert as the backup Will Shipley, who they took in the 4th round. He was a 3-year starter at Clemson. He averaged 93 yards per game over his entire college career, freshman, sophomore, junior year, including his freshman year. He was just that good, consistent. He had nearly 1,200 rushing yards as his season best 2 years ago. He had 38 receptions 2 years ago. Last year, the receptions ticked down, the receiving yards ticked up, and he actually had a career high in receiving yards last year, nearly 250 as a running back. That's a lot in college. I could see Will Shipley playing a significant role as early as week 1 as a kick returner. We can show off his 4.3 speed and elusiveness. He had 900 return yards at Clemson during those 3 seasons. And if anything happens to Saquon Barkley, insert Will Shipley, who runs in the 4.3s and will be playing behind a top-flight offensive line for a top offense in the Philadelphia Eagles.
This episode is made possible by Underdog Fantasy, and Underdog Fantasy is the leader in best ball. When you go to join an Underdog Fantasy best ball draft, it fills very quickly, especially now. It's Best Ball Mania season, baby! Best Ball Mania 5! I can't believe they're at Best Ball Mania 5 already. $15 million in prizes. They're giving out $15 million with $1.5 million to first. Playing in best ball leagues makes you better. It helps train you on player value and strategy. And Underdog offers a lot more than just best ball contests. They offer pick'ems. My new favorite, the golf pick'ems, baseball pick'ems going on throughout the off season. Hit the pick'ems, back to best ball, hit the pick'ems. So use promo code Underworld. Promo code Underworld gets you a 50% deposit bonus up to $250. So they've increased the maximum deposit bonus. It was $100. Now it's up to $125. When you get the Underdog app, use promo code Underworld and go draft your ass off.
Welcome back, folks. I'm Josh Larky. This is the Dominator. I am talking about my favorite fantasy football sleepers for 2024. We're using Underdog Fantasy ADP, round 13 or later. But as I mentioned at the start of the show, it really doesn't matter if you're a best ball redraft. These are players I legitimately think you can start in a managed league. It's not best ball exclusive players. I've got a few receivers for you. Let's talk about Darnell Mooney. Now, he's with the Falcons right now. Last year on the Bears, he struggled. He took a backseat to DJ Moore in Chicago. Before that, Mooney was targeted on a very elite 27% of his routes in both 2021 and 2022. For context, Garrett Wilson's never reached that number in either of his NFL seasons. Hello, Darnell Mooney. Mooney probably won't have much value in week 1. So pump the brakes. Pump the brakes. But he's likely 1 injury away from a fantasy wide receiver 2 or fantasy wide receiver 3 role with 2 different injury outs. Either Drake London or Kyle Pitts goes down. Darnell Mooney catching passes from Kirk Cousins. I like Demarcus Robinson of the Rams. The final 5 games of the fantasy season last year, weeks 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. He had at least 13 fantasy points in all of them. 64 receiving yards per game on average. He was the wide receiver 19 in fantasy points per game. Even though Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp were healthy. They're healthy. They're still healthy. He's the wide receiver 3. He still is the wide receiver 19 in fantasy points per game. I think it's pretty easy to see how we could start Demarcus Robinson in fantasy if either Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp goes down. There's nothing at tight end for the Rams this year. Remember, Tyler Higbee had the late season ACL tear. Let's talk about Roman Wilson. Last receiver, and then I got 5 tight ends, and I'll get you out of here, folks. 3rd round rookie wide receiver out of Michigan. A low volume pass attack while he was there with JJ McCarthy, and then he goes to the combine and he impresses. He runs a 4.39 40 time. That's similar to Jamar Chase. The Steelers offense, yeah, it's going to be run heavy, but they've got new offensive coordinator Arthur Smith. And he ran really, really effective offenses when he was the offensive coordinator with the Titans. He looked overmatched as head coach with the Falcons, but as the offensive coordinator, I thought he looked pretty damn good. But Russell Wilson, we'll bring him up again. Russell Wilson, we're bringing him up again. Russell Wilson threw 26 touchdowns last year. I want you to eat it. I want you to remember it. More touchdowns per game than Patrick Mahomes. And there's just George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth in the passing game. Now that Deontay Johnson's on the Panthers. If Pickens or Freiermuth goes down, we could be looking at a fantasy relevant starter at wide receiver in the 3rd round rookie, Roman Wilson. Tight ends. Before we get to those folks, I'm Josh Larky. This is the Dominator. Make sure you're subscribed, watching YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever it is. It's in your Apple and Spotify podcast feeds. Player Profiler, the Dominator, tight ends, 5 of them, Hunter Henry. There's a slight chance he's the number 1 option for new quarterback drafted at number 3 overall, Drake May. He's a close to the line of scrimmage option for the rookie. And if Drake May's better than advertised, think CJ Stroud from last year, where we all thought the Texans supporting cast was terrible. We hated that offense. And then suddenly Stroud looks great. He brings multiple players with him in fantasy football. I think the entire offense's starters have a chance to be fantasy relevant if May is better than advertised. Hunter Henry, the clear starter at tight end. Another guy that I really like is Jonnu Smith. Playing on the Falcons last year alongside Kyle Pitts, he only had 5 fewer receiving yards per game. Jonnu Smith last year had his career high in receiving yards. He's now on the Miami Dolphins. There's Tyreek Hill. There's Jalen Waddle. There's not much else. He could be a fringe fantasy tight end 1 like Mike Gesicki used to be with the Dolphins. If Tyreek or Waddle go down, suddenly you could be looking at the tight end 7 or tight end 8 on a weekly basis with the athletic big Jonnu Smith. I like Tyler Conklin. I've liked him for years. I still like him. I refuse to stop liking him. And he refuses to stop earning targets. He has had, you can check his stats anywhere you want, playerprofiler.com. They're free to check out there. Tyler Conklin has exactly 87 targets in 3 straight seasons, at least 58 catches, at least 552 receiving yards in 3 straight seasons as well. He's had a touchdown catch every 30 receptions over the past 3 years. Every 30 catches, 1's in the end zone over the past 3 years. Tight ends usually have a touchdown rate 3 to 4 times that high. And Conklin plays with Aaron Rodgers now. He might be the number 2 option behind wide receiver Garrett Wilson, given that Mike Williams with the ACL tear, Malachi Corley, a raw 3rd round rookie, they might just not be ready to contribute this year in a major way like Tyler Conklin's been doing for 3 straight seasons. 65 catches, 750 yards, 8 touchdowns is firmly in Conklin's range of outcomes. That's a pretty, that seems fair. And if he would have had that last year, he would have been the tight end 8 in fantasy points per game behind David and Njoku. Isaiah Likely. So he was nearly Mark Andrews last year whenever he was the starter and Andrews was hurt. You're looking at a handcuffed top 5 fantasy tight end. Andrews is now 29 years old. He's coming off the major ankle injury from last year. So there's a decent chance injuries just hit Mark Andrews again in 2024. And we say hello once again to our fantasy lineups and Isaiah Likely. Finally, we got to the last one. This one I'm excited about. I mentioned his name earlier on the show, so I'll give everyone 5 seconds to think back. Who could it have been? I mentioned the name Mike Gesicki. He had over 700 receiving yards in back-to-back seasons in 2020 and 2021. Then he struggled to find a role the past 2 years with the Dolphins and then with the Patriots last year. Now he's on the Bengals, a team that has nothing at tight end. They did very little to replace Tyler Boyd. Bengals beat reporter Paul Dehner of The Athletic has reported that the team wants to use Mike Gesicki as a big slot. Mike Gesicki has Joe Burrow's phone number. They have been texting. Gesicki said he's a really cool guy. I don't want to bother him too much, but he's clearly making the effort to reach out to me. I'm clearly making the effort to take Mike Gesicki in the final round of drafts. 600 to 700 receiving yards, 6 to 7 touchdowns on the table for Mike Gesicki. I'm Josh Larky. This is the Dominator. Underdog Fantasy Player Profiler, late round sleepers, 22 of them in 22 minutes. Whew. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.